Okay, it's 4:13 on Tuesday, December 12th, 2014, and on a different computer. It wasn't working on the other one. I mean, I guess on the other one I would have to like just reboot the computer each time I want to like, make the video, but I just didn't feel like doing it, so I'm trying it on this one. It seems to be working well enough, so that's good. So yeah, I'm staying with the theme of happiness because it's like, I mean, in a certain sense, it's the wisest kind of thing to talk about. Um, like I love to talk about just the idea that nothing's up to us, that we don't have a free will and all, because it's just so amazing. Um, but that's kind of like, yeah, that's more amazing than immediately useful. It is useful. I'm not saying it's not useful, because like to the extent you understand nothing's up to you, then it does lead to changes in how you view the world and yourself and stuff. But but it doesn't compare to happiness, because like, the best that understanding the free will and illusion will get you is that it will make you happier, because happiness is all there is. Okay, I'm a little tired, but and I don't want to do 2 hours today. I just don't. Um, but I wanted to do this. I mean, I definitely did want to do this. Um, yeah, happiness. All right, happiness. Yeah, I want to like go over what it is, um, because like I think we don't really have a very clear conception of what it is. It's kind of like there was like this Supreme Court justice a long time ago who I think he said it was related to pornography. I don't know, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And I think happiness is very much like that. It's nebulous. It's kind of like, I mean, we can define it in terms of science. It's a feeling, it's a state, it's a mood. Um, and we're familiar with what makes us happy. We don't think about happiness nearly as much as we could. But in terms of what actually it is, I mean, it really, because we don't think about it, because it's not really so much a part of the culture, we're at a loss in terms of understanding it. Um, so, um, and I mean, I could go into like why that is. It's not part of the culture and all, but like, in a certain sense, that's kind of like tangential. I mean, like it's interesting, but it's not like as important to know, understand as to really just focus on what happiness is. Um, so I think, it could be, I mean, like definitely happiness is about feeling good, feeling happy, feeling content, satisfied, joyful, whatever you want to call it, from a positive perspective. Um, but I have a feeling for many of us, for most of us, we tend to understand happiness in terms of what it's not. In other words, like when we're not worried about something, when we're not upset about something, when we're not afraid of something. That's kind of like very similar to worrying. When we're not dissatisfied about something, it's very similar to being upset. When we're not angry about something, very similar to being dissatisfied and upset. When we're not sad about something, very similar to about being dissatisfied. It's all about dissatisfaction in a certain sense. But the idea is like, to the extent we're not feeling these negative experiences, then that leaves room for happiness, Or when our mind is not so preoccupied with things we have to do, obligations, responsibilities, things that have to get done, and we're like so immersed in what has to get done that, it may not necessarily be unhappiness at that time. If things are going well, if things are getting done or whatever. But, I'm not sure it's exactly happiness either. Um, so, and all right, with me, yeah, it's about dissatisfaction. In other words, like what limits my happiness, and I think this is not just with me, I think it's with a lot of people. You know, most people, I think, are focused on their personal lives, their jobs, families, friends, their immediate lives. And to the extent, you know, to the extent they're satisfied with all that, then they tend to be happy. To the extent they're not, then that limits the happiness. So like, and the thing is like, so like, all right, my happiness, yeah, I'm somewhat dissatisfied with my personal life in a certain sense, but a lot of my dissatisfaction is like, goes beyond that in terms of like, the way the world is and where the world is going and all that stuff. Um, and I think in either case, what happens is that like, we have to acknowledge that there's, it's like that serenity prayer. There are things we can change, there are things we can't, and like when we can't, we have to understand that we can't and accept that we can't. So yeah, happiness, I was talking to somebody earlier today about this. Happiness is really a lot about acceptance. Accepting that, life, your life, reality, isn't as good as it should be, doesn't work as well as it should be, But, the logic then goes that, well, like, it just really doesn't help, usually, much more often than not, to bemoan reality, to like become upset, to allow the way things are to interfere with one's happiness. So just from a very, logical, wisdom-based perspective, it's good to recognize that and to not try to make something that in a certain sense can't be perfect, or try to not expect what can't be perfect to be perfect, or even to be more perfect, or just again, that's not to say we shouldn't be working on certain things to make them more perfect, but actually, so that just brings us to this. There are a lot of things, a lot of aspects of our lives that we can like work on to improve, spend a lot of hours, making money, projects, whatever, redecorating, what else? Learning about something, keeping up on, one's hobby. A lot of things we can make better, or just like there's a lot of things that actually we just pursue as an activity. It's not even about making them better, but I mean, to the extent that stuff makes one happy, then all is good. And if one's relatively satisfied with one's level of happiness, then that all is relatively good. But, to the extent one isn't, and most of us, I would say, are, I don't think we're as like, we're not, because like, interesting, I'm not sure there's much research on this. The research generally measures people's happiness on a scale of 1 to 10. How happy are you? 1 to 11, 1 to 7, whatever. But they don't tend to delve into like how satisfied one is with one's level of happiness. In other words, somebody could be like only 70% happy, but they don't expect any more. So they might actually, be in a better state than somebody who's like actually 80% happy, but like wants to be 95% happy. I know it's a kind of like subtle distinction there, but I think it makes sense. And in my experience, it makes sense because, I rate my happiness at about 95, 96 or so. And, but yeah, I think it's because I made this goal. I really made it over the last, 8 or 9 months, this goal to just like become really happy, much happier again, regain my happiness because I had it back 10 years ago. I mean, like, didn't diminish all that much, but still, I mean, I got sidetracked. I just like focused on other things and just didn't work on it, and happiness really is like going to the gym. It's like, you know, if you want to be fit, you got to go to the gym or work out or, walk around at least, whatever. So if you want to kind of like be as happy as you can be, you know, in certain sense, some people are naturally like blissed out, whatever, and that's really lucky. That's good. But in general, you know, it's not if you want to be happy, but if you want to be substantially happier than you are. That's the thing. Because in other words, you can be fit without going to the gym. You can be happy without working on happiness. But if you want to like, go to this next level, then yeah, it takes work. Um, so so yeah, and that's so much of it is like, it goes back to that Buddhist second noble truth. The second noble truth is really about acceptance. Like, um, suffering comes from attachments. Attachments are we not accepting the way things are. We kind of like sensing or thinking or feeling that things should be better, and there's really nothing wrong with that to a certain extent because that's how things improve. But where the problem comes in is like we also attach that, well, you know we recognize that things should be better, and because they're not better, that means we're not going to be as happy as we could be. And that's the problem, and that's like a very, very powerful challenge. I think part of it has to do with the media. The media, I think, has a vested interest in keeping the public afraid. You've heard this for decades, and it makes a lot of sense. And nobody cares anymore because the media is so rich; they don't care whether you know this or not. That's how they make their money. Because the idea is like, for example, like think of crisis situations, whether it's a hurricane or a flood or something that affects a lot of people. Let's say it affects you in your area, right? So during those times, we tend to watch more news. We want to know what's going on, and we're concerned. It's a good thing, but the media kind of takes advantage of that. The media wants to keep us constantly in that state, so we're constantly, watching more and more, and that's not a good thing. So I have a feeling. So I don't, I've chosen not to like watch much news, especially recently over the last year or so, because it's so negative. But I'm not sure one can like completely escape the effect of that because I have a feeling as long as other people are watching the news, they're being affected by it, and you pass them on the street, and you may not even like be talking with them or having any direct contact. I think that like people, just like even accept as normal this kind of like pervasive low level anxiety, this apprehension that makes them like tune into the news for an hour or two every day, reading papers and all that. Just like so much of the news is negative. Um, but having said that it's still, you can't control the media, you can't control other people so very much, but you have some what more control of yourself, what you're going to be, how you're going to, what you're going to focus on, and you can like override to a certain extent that influence, and that's the key. Okay, I think I'm only going to do half an hour today because that's all I want to do, and so we're already at 14:45, and I'm halfway through it, and but here, no, this is so good because I may go longer because then, like, just like the thought comes to me, I haven't figured this out yet. Again, I know a lot about happiness. These happiness researchers throughout the world, they know a lot about happiness, but I can tell you for a fact a lot of these people are not blissed out. Why? Because like it's one thing to know this stuff. It's kind of like let's say you're a coach. Let's say you're a trainer. Okay, so you know everything about training, about exercising, lifting weights, aerobics, all this stuff. But let's say you don't ever make it to the gym. I mean, all the knowledge in the world about working out isn't going to like help you unless you actually work out. So like it's the same thing with happiness. The top happiness experts in the world, and even a lot of happiness experts, I would guess, that are actually like coaching people on happiness. I don't think they're nearly as happy as they could be because they don't work on it systematically, or enough, whatever. But or because, no, more than that, because like, there's a lot of facts you can know about happiness. Like, let's say the happiest people, even the happiest people, are only happy about 50% of the time. Or that more money above the poverty line hardly makes a difference, in one's level of happiness. And like, New York State, if you're making over 70,000 a year, any more is not going to make any difference. There's a lot of facts about happiness. Some are good to know. Like as we get older, a lot of people are afraid of becoming less happy. Fortunately, older people tend not to have as high a high or as low a low as younger people. They tend to be more in the moderate range, but fortunately, older people are actually much happier than we would ordinarily think they are, which is a great thing to know. You don't have to worry about that. But what I want to figure out for myself, and if you're interested in this also for yourself, if happiness is all we want, why are we, what we're stuck on? It's not like that we just want happiness. It's like we want happiness according to our criteria. In other words, we want happiness based on things going the way we want them to go. Things succeeding, things working out, whatever it is. We have a certain kind of like picture of the way we believe reality or our lives or the world should work. And a lot of us base our happiness on that. If things are going well, we're happy. If things are going less well, we may not become unhappy, but we're distracted at the very least. Like we're not enjoying our happiness. It's kind of like if you have like a beautiful painting, right? And you have it, but like you keep it in a closet, it's not hanging up, well, you can't enjoy it. So a lot of times it's like that, so if we're not focused on our happiness, it's kind of like having that painting in the closet. You can't enjoy what you're not focused on. And so, all right, so in my life, after this, I've got some work I've been putting off, and I did a little bit today, but hopefully I'll get some more done tomorrow. Paperwork, and I got to create a new intro to one of my shows, and then then there's some other like stuff that I've taken on, like this forum that I created, and this I'm just realizing that it's not being listed by Google, and so I asked myself, what's the point if people can't find it? But it's more than that. I think like in my life, like I recently learned about this like chemical called DMT, and it's how it's used in this like Amazon tribal ceremony where they call it ayahuasca, where it's kind of like a mixture of like this plant containing DMT with another plant containing an MAO inhibitor, which makes the effect of the DMT last much longer, because ordinarily it only lasts like about 6 to 10 minutes. And so and this is actually legal throughout the world because it is it's a religious tradition that's been around for centuries. And so anyway, I've just gotten a bit interested in that because it's related to our pineal gland. in other words, our pineal gland naturally produces this DMT stuff, and I don't know, it's dimethyl whatever tryptophan or something. I don't know what it is, but our pineal, it's all right. What fascinates me about this stuff, again, I'm tangenting because I'm kind of like expressing and describing one of the multitude of things that kind of like comes between me and being as blissed out as I would otherwise want to be, So anyway, with this basically, it works on the pineal gland, and what fascinates me about this is that there are like other. I mean, the only real drug I've really taken is marijuana or the synthetic cannabis. I mean, a long time ago, I did some cocaine, and I did mescaline once, but like didn't really understand it. But that's pretty much about it. I've never tried LSD or heroin or peyote or stuff like that. But I've read a little about them, and like my understanding is like with these kinds of experiences, yeah, you hallucinate, you see. I don't know what you see. I can't really describe it, but apparently you see things, whatever, and apparently it's interesting, whatever. But I've been watching videos on this DMT stuff, and apparently this is different. And again, it relates very much to the pineal gland. Apparently, in this DMT experience, in other experiences, you're just seeing and hearing things and stuff like that, but you're not really interacting with them. In other words, like the distinctive feature of this stuff is that, according to the reports, you are actually communicating with beings that are presumably much more intelligent, like angels or, just superior beings that, that exist in this, like, and if they exist, if we're not conjuring them up, because who knows, we may be, they exist in this 96% of the universe that we have no idea what it is, aside from it exerting a gravitational force. That's why we know it's there, but aside from that, we have no idea what it is. We haven't really interacted with it. So, I mean, it could be that these beings are within that realm, and somehow with the pineal gland, it's like our brain kind of like takes in information and puts it together and processes it and, makes sense of it and then does stuff with it. But like, I think this has to do with, and I've felt it in my life actually once, maybe I'll go into this some other time, that our brain can also be kind of like a receptor to stuff, like a TV receiver or a radio receiver can receive messages from outside of the person that aren't really generated within the brain. So, like, I mean, like with these interactions that people report with these beings, I mean, like they report them as being kind of transformative. That like once they've had something like that, it just, although it's interesting, like very few people like have a lot of those experiences. I don't know, but the question that arises is that I'm taking too much time on this. Just to cut it short, basically, whether it's an actual hallucination, the brain is creating this, or whether it's contact with a part of reality, again, that's presumably in the 96% that we don't ordinarily have contact with. And so that fascinates me. But anyway, the point is that I have a curiosity about things, and that right now it's about that, and then I have a few other things. I was listening to a few happiness podcasts, and it's about stimulation. It's about, like, we're addicted to learning, because it's about learning. Oh, this is cool. It's about like my curiosity being aroused and my, getting sucked into like wanting to know whatever it is. And that's why a lot of us have a lot of like books. For example, a lot of nonfiction books. we encounter something, we read something that makes, oh, I wonder how this works. And so we want to know more and more about it. And yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But, according to the research, just like knowing a lot isn't going to make you much happier or at all. I mean, according to the research, the more knowledge you have, it doesn't translate into greater happiness. As a matter of fact, I want to go through this because like this is happiness related. Take how much money you make, where you live, whether you're single or married, whether you're a man or a woman, to whom you were born, where you were raised, what you learned, what your job is. Take all those demographics, right? And put them all together, what your religion is, whether you practice religion, all this stuff. Put them together and they account together for about 10% of your happiness. Think about it. And that includes like your level of education, how much you know, how intelligent you are, 10% included. So that means like whether you're married or not, that'll account for maybe 1%, how much money you make generally accounts for less than that. But here's the thing. So like our lives to a great extent are involved in that, in kind of like learning about things. I mean, again, how much we know or not, that's within that 10%, but it really doesn't affect our happiness level much. So, all right, so like my challenge is that I, at sometimes much more so than other times, certainly recently, am kind of like feeling this addiction to knowledge, feeling compelled by my curiosity. And it's kind of like, this is good. It's kind of, to the extent that I've kind of like sensed this, right? But I haven't really talked about it much. I mean, there's so much that goes on in our lives that we don't talk about, because like if we would, then we'd be talking about these things for 3-4 hours a day. But now, thinking about it now and talking about it and, expressing it, it kind of, I think, is part of the process that like, what may happen as a result of this is I may decide to resist that curious urge. Fine, I want to listen to a podcast, but I'm going to do what feels better, actually. In other words, like, I know if I sit down, close my eyes, smile a bit, and focus on the feeling of happiness, maybe say to myself as a mantra, I feel completely happy, over and over, that can feel really good. All right, I got to explore this. So then why would we gravitate toward experiences like watching TV, even watching a live game, whatever, or a movie or something, that don't really make you feel as happy? Let's say you had the choice. I mean, like a lot of people don't meditate, and especially don't meditate on happiness, so like, maybe the choice doesn't so much apply to them. But in my experience, I have this choice before me. I know how to meditate. I know how to make it work. But yet sometimes I don't take advantage of it. I don't, And all right, so I want to try to figure this out. Part of it may be that like conditioning. Part of us like senses and appreciates that we're feeling really happy, but our culture doesn't value happiness that much. It's not like one of the commodities. I mean, it's ostensibly it does. It's in our Declaration of Independence, or is it in the Declaration or the Constitution? I don't know. I think it's the Declaration, but anyway, and like when you ask people, in survey after survey for decades, what do you want most out of your life? The number one answer is almost invariably happiness. Certainly, sometimes like they ask these Russian people what they wanted, and it wasn't happiness, but then they ask, well, what do you want for your kids the most? and the number one answer turns to be happiness. So like happiness is really what we identify as, like Aristotle pointed out, the highest good. And it was not just him. I mean, a lot of the Greeks understood this, that happiness is the only end in life. Everything else is a means. So, given that, what is it about this pull to know things? I mean, part of it may be genetic or related to our. I want to see. Just hold on for a second. All right. A lot of it may be related to our evolution as a species. In other words, like for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, our primary concern was survival. And who knows, maybe that's like overrated actually. Maybe tens of thousands of years ago there was like abundant food. I mean, like there weren't all that many people around. And they maybe like spent, an hour or two, looking for food each day. And, that's pretty much all they worked, because, yeah, I read someplace that like pre-industrial societies, they just worked, 4 hours a day. Sometimes like with agriculture societies, they might work a bit more in the fall and the spring, planting and harvesting, but in the summer and winter, there wasn't anything to do, so they didn't do much. But I guess maybe like, the conditioning of our civilization over the last 200-300 years has changed a lot of that. And there's also this kind of like this upward mobility trend to make more of yourself, if you're poor, you want to be at least in the middle class. If you're in the middle class, you want to be rich, or you want, we're just conditioned, in school, in society, to just want to become more. And I think that, experiences, the kind of experiences we'd have while watching a movie or while learning things. I think those kinds of experiences a lot of times get us to feel like, oh yeah, we're making progress toward this greater self-actualization, this progress, But what's interesting, again, this is where the happiness research is so important, basically when we get what we want, whether it's like more money, a bigger house, if we get married, if we have kids, all this stuff that we predict is going to make us happier, generally it makes us just slightly happier, if at all. Again, 10% of our happiness is all of that stuff put together. Sometimes people say like married people tend to be a bit happier than single people, and interestingly, married people without children are happier than married people with children. But in terms of like the happiness level of married people versus single people, I think, see, you gotta determine the direction of causality. You've got the correlation, but I think in those cases, it's probably why are married people somewhat happier, and it's not all that much, than single people. It's probably because they were happier to begin with, and the happier you are, the more likely it is that you will become married. Because the happier you are, the more able you are to share those feelings with others, and to the extent you can do that, then that creates a lot of what makes for a successful marriage. As opposed to like people just like complaining to each other. It's like, So, all right. So basically, I think my main point though is that that there are these distractions to happiness because we set, we have these interests, and they change. This is aside from our responsibilities. We have to get some stuff done. Like I've got a couple of shows that I got to prepare for, and I've got my meetups, and I've got stuff going on. That it entails some responsibilities, and then the basic household chores and all that stuff. But I'm talking about aside from all that stuff, we have this time that's our own, and And so, like, even though we understand that happiness is all we want, you know, we just gravitate toward a lot of activities that aren't very successful. And again, like, if if the happiness level in the United States wasn't 70%, if it was like 90, 95%, then I'm not sure it would be much of a problem. But it is just 70%, meaning that like about 20% of the population, American population, is 80% happy or happier. That means there are a lot of people that are less happy than even 70%, and that means they're not very happy at all. Um, and So yeah, I mean, like, we kind of like, what a lot of us do is like, a lot of us take a sour grapes attitude, like, oh, I don't want to be happier because if I was happier, I wouldn't I wouldn't enjoy it. Some people say, like, you don't want to be happy all the time because, like, you need the suffering to appreciate the happiness. That's actually nonsense, because there's some people that have what's known as a hyperthymic personality, and that's not a disorder. That's just how they identify them. You have personality types A, type B, whatever. So these people are just like very, very happy, very naturally. That's their default position. And no, they are not like bouncing back and forth between like suffering and happiness. No, they don't have to experience like bouts of suffering, whatever, to appreciate their happiness. They just like, So yeah, I think that's part of it. It's like, I think people kind of like, because people aren't aware that you can become happier, then they say to themselves, well, like, I don't want to become happier because if I wanted to become happier and I felt that I couldn't, well, that would be something that would be disappointing. It'd make a marginal level of happiness more difficult, because then you're not accepting it. So, but all right, but back to my dilemma. So, all right, so maybe this isn't, like, I was asking myself, this is like my fifth video, and apparently the universe has me making them every day, and I don't think I want to make them 2 hours every day. I just, sometimes I may, sometimes I may not. But, but I think that the value of this is that, because of this, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to take mine. In other words, like, if I come on here and for like 20 minutes talk about how, like, how it just makes no sense, it's not wise for me to like focus on stuff that's not going to like get me in touch with my greatest happiness, then like I leave here, I turn off the computer and I'm looking for what to do next. Well, that's going to like, I don't want to kind of like feel irrational. I don't want to feel unwise. So like, just, to the extent that I'm, that's actually like sometimes when you teach happiness, it's a very good way to become much happier, because like if you're teaching happiness, it's kind of like if you're teaching comedy, you better be funny, because like, otherwise, so like, it's a motivation. It kind of like, inspires you to just work on it. All right, 38 minutes, 46 seconds. Yeah, I think I've done enough of this because, because I want to get some other things done. But no, I'm definitely, no, a lot of what I want to get done is I want to like, tomorrow I've got a really busy day. So I want to just like, develop the willpower to overcome these distractions, these diversions, these unnecessary and in a certain sense unproductive, considering that all that really is of value is happiness, activities. So, yeah. All right. So anyway, so like, I think I'm going to cut this short because again, I want to get to the meditating, and I want to like, I mean, I may want to like, for example, like I just learned recently, willpower is actually very important tool to have. In other words, like certain kind of like an extroverted personality that has, let's say, emotional intelligence is going to like lead to more success in the world than an introverted kind of like cerebral intelligence, because the world is very social. People, it's not how smart you are, is how you communicate with others, or how others feel around you and stuff, and how well you're able to kind of like perceive social situations and people and all that. So like so yeah, with willpower, I think I've been learning recently that like in terms of a skill, to kind of like, in other words, I just set myself the goal of just like, later tonight, hopefully not too much later, meditating on happiness and overcoming the temptation, the urge to turn on a podcast or to like watch a YouTube video or to do anything, to like, whatever. So yeah, so like again, to the extent that I'm kind of like figuring out, well, what's the benefit of this? This is one benefit that's coming from doing this. It's like it's keying me in more on my need to work more on happiness. And this is interesting. So if this works, then as an experiment, you should be able to like detect day by day, week by week, maybe subtle or whatever, but like, my increasing happiness, or at least the expression thereof. Okay. All right, I think I'm done. Yeah, because I want to check, I got home about an hour ago or so, and I haven't checked my email yet, and, haven't done stuff. So, all right. So I hope you're having a good day, and, if the universe wants me to, I will be back tomorrow with another George Ortega video journal. So, okay, see you then.